Aviation sector comes alive as flights begin operation in Nigeria. Africa Development Bank projects West African economies to depreciate by 4.3% in 2020. Nigeria and others will lose $236.7 billion GDP. Federal Inland Revenue Service extends tax debt payments to August 31st. And as COVID-19 continues to affect economies, Nigeria's gross reserves declined by $400 million in June of 2020. This is the midweek edition of Business Express, and we are reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Amina Nujaim. Welcome. Businesses are expected to receive a boost as life is gradually returning to the aviation sector, described as the fastest growing in Nigeria. Benny Adams was at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, to see firsthand the resumption of flights to and from Abuja this Wednesday morning.
The landing and takeoff of this aircraft is evident to the fact that the Nigerian skies are open to commercial flights. This particular airline came from the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos and landed here this morning at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport. And about now, boarding is being concluded for takeoff back to Lagos. On this opening, as we are told by the Presidential Task Force as well as the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, today is the opening day and flights are only allowed from Lagos to Abuja and Abuja to Lagos. And we hear 4 airlines have been given permission for this exercise. As you can also see, the passengers are excited. They are observing the 2 meters apart social distancing. In there we usually have up to 20 to 25 persons, but at this moment we just have 4 people inside. This is to ensure that the physical distancing protocol is also being observed. And up there I spoke earlier on to the captain. He is excited that he's back flying again after 3 months of staying at home as a result of the effect of the coronavirus.
It feels really good to be back flying here after so much, wait and suspense, and this whole COVID thing has really put reality back into everybody's eyes,
Fares are not going to be a free for all for any stakeholder to charge unilaterally. They have traditionally been controlled. There's a lot of regulation, there's control, so it's going to be the same. The industry cares about all stakeholders, including passengers.
I'm going for a business meeting in Lagos, and I'm actually happy.
At this moment, we have seen safety measures from the entrance of the terminal, where you have hand washing points as well as hand sanitizing points at every point to ensure that every passenger coming into the airport gets to observe the cleaning ritual that is expected to stay healthy and also stay alive. That is it from here at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport.
Africa Development Bank has projected that Nigeria and the rest of the continent will suffer a gross domestic product GDP loss of $189.7 billion this year. The AFDB Africa Economic Outlook released Tuesday noted that pre-COVID-19 estimates of Africa GDP has predicted a growth of $2.59 trillion for the year. The AFDB says some losses are to be carried over to 2021 as the projected recovery would be partial. According to the bank, many countries in Africa entered the crisis period with high debt-to-GDP ratio, which are projected to increase further up by 10 percentage points beyond pre-COVID trajectory in 2020 and 2021. The AFDB advised that given the global scale of COVID-19 pandemic and its repercussions, governments and development partners must respond in a coordinated, target and rapid manners to effectively limit its impacts. Now, the Federal Inland Revenue Service has further extended the closing date of its waiver of penalty and interest window on tax debt owed by individuals and businesses from June 30, 2020 to August 31, 2020. Executive Chairman FIRS Mohammed Nami disclosed this latest extension in a statement issued on Wednesday by Director Communications and Liaison FIRS Abdullahi Ismail Ahmed. Nami stated that the extension is a follow-up to a number of palliative measures devised by the FIRS to cushion the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the Nigerian economy in order to support tax-paying individuals and business entities in the country. The latest extension applies to tax audit, tax investigation and desk review assessment approved installment payment plans under Voluntary Asset and Income Declaration asset VADs, yet to be fully liquidated. And still on cushioning the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the federal government has approved debt forgiveness and licensing fee waiver for terrestrial broadcast stations in the country, as revealed by the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, this week. The interventions by federal government are to ensure financial sustainability among broadcast stations in the country and, among other things, include 60% debt forgiveness for all debt broadcast stations in the country, and effective date of debt forgiveness shall be July 10, 2020 to October 6, 2020.
He has promised 50 billion stimulus package for businesses and households. I was expecting that CBN could also increase that a bit and do sectorial targets. For instance, media. Media has been affected. NTA, for instance, has been affected, and not only NTA, even those in advertising, outdoor advertising, purely doing static structures. Businesses have slashed their advert budget. Because they slashed their advert budget, you are going to have the impact on government-based and private TV stations and radio stations and advertising generally, even newspaper. They are all going to be affected because when they don't get revenue from advertising, they're going to have issue. So I also want to advise other regulators to follow suit what NBC have done. NBC have given waiver to a number of media houses so that the impact could be significantly mitigated.
Any station that is unable to pay the balance of 40% indebtedness within the 3 months window shall forfeit the opportunity to enjoy the stated debt forgiveness. The debt forgiveness shall apply to functional licensed terrestrial radio and television stations only.
Many Nigerian radio and television stations remain indebted to the federal government to the tune of 7.8 billion naira, and many of these stations are faced with the reality that their licenses will not be renewed in view of the indebtedness. The federal government's intervention for broadcast industry is our focus of discussion on this edition of Business Express. And we have in the studio Professor Armstrong Idachaba. He is Director General, National Broadcasting Commission. It's a pleasure to have you in the studio with us on the program today.
Thank you very much, Amina. It's a big delight to be on Business Express.
Our pleasure. Now, no better person to answer our first question. Could you give us an insight into the intricacies of the intervention for the broadcast sector in Nigeria?
Again, thank you very much. I think that the motivation, the purpose, and circumstances that actually guaranteed the federal government's thought for a waiver intervention were well elucidated by the Honorable Minister in the background report you gave, and the gentleman who also gave an interview. Point is that, yes, the Nigerian broadcast industry, especially during the period of the pandemic, actually showed uncommon patriotism, such that they virtually abdicated regular programming. They made huge sacrifices, coming to work morning till night under very difficult conditions. And many broadcast stations, even on their own, created jingles, advertorials on their own with their little finances, just to keep the population enlightened during the period. We found that very, very commendable. But more importantly, we also knew that because revenues were not coming in, most of the operations were becoming hugely endangered. We had heard reports about several who were reducing broadcast hours. There were those who were planning to downsize some of their staff. And the federal government, in its wisdom, thought that it is key that the broadcast industry be rejuvenated in a way that it remains central to all the ancillary facets for national development.
Now, talking about still making the media relevant in a unique time like this, there's talk about the 2-month licensing fee waiver granted terrestrial stations in the country. Could you shed more light on that?
Yes, apparently that has now turned out to be an interim measure because we didn't want to bother broadcast stations with the responsibility of bothering about license fees at the time that they were dedicating so much time and energy and resources, into performing a fundamental national objective of keeping the citizenry enlightened. So we, between the periods of March and April, gave out those 2-month waiver to all broadcast stations. But we also found out that that apparently wasn't enough. Of course, even preceding the pandemic, many broadcast stations had actually made the appeal, for a reconsideration of license fees. Pay special notes to stations operating in conflict-ridden zones, especially in the northeast and the northwest, areas of insecurity where broadcast operations have become hugely threatened. And it was apparent that they needed to get some kind of intervention one way or the other.
Let me come in here a little bit. Talking about interventions, the Central Bank of Nigeria has extended palliatives to other sectors, businesses within the country to help cushion the effects of the situation Nigeria has found itself in. Is there a case for the media, like you highlighted in what you said a few seconds ago, that the media have been in the forefront as much as the media? So is there a place for the media industry?
Yes, I must place on record the efforts of the Honorable Minister for Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, who for some time now has been navigating, so to say, and trying to find any opportunity that he could eventually create for the media industry or the creative industry generally to enjoy some kind of intervention. I'm aware that he made presentations with the CBN, even at the level of the Presidential Post-COVID Effect Implementation Committee. The Honorable Minister also made some key recommendations. And gladly, some of these things are coming in place. So yes, at the level of CBN and other levels of intervention, the government has actually been contemplating, ways that we could ameliorate some of the huge debts or financial responsibilities that have been imposed on broadcast stations by the circumstances of COVID and other prevailing socio-economic conditions.
So is the NBC making a case for the media?
Absolutely. The NBC is always making a case for the media. If you listen to the speech of the minister, I think he alluded to the point that yes, economic challenges are prevalent, But the media, more than an economic vehicle or an industry, is one that has this vital role of enlightening and educating the people. That social imperative is very inhuman and is holistic. It's beyond the narrow visions of the economic benefit. So I think to that extent, and not just only in Nigeria, every country actually takes the media industry very, very seriously.
Okay. Talking about how important the media industry is, not too long ago, the economic impact of the immediate media industry was not felt. It was more like the advertising had upper hand. Recently, we have the creative industry, for instance, contributing hugely to the revenue Nigeria gets. Now, how would you assess the broadcast industry in Nigeria with what it has to offer?
We're glad you raised the point about advertising and the creative industry. And of course, the enabler, the purveyor of value for the creative industry basically is the broadcast medium. No matter how qualitative a creative content is, if it is not put on a platform, if it is not disseminated, the potential for maximization of reach and profit is narrowed. And what we have seen over the time is that the Nigerian broadcast industry, more than any other vehicle, is the one that has actually propagated Nigerian cultural idioms. Is it talking about the home video? The home video has gained more traction and visibility across the world because it has been put through the platform of the broadcast medium, whether it is terrestrial, whether it is satellite, whether it is pay TV, or whether it's even on the internet protocol. The dissemination happens across the broadcast platform. So broadcasting definitely gives value, you know, to cultural creativity or any other form of creativity for that matter.
Okay, now in closing, this waiver, for instance, and the reduction in payment, is it just for this period? What happens post-COVID-19?
Yeah, quite instructively too, I think that we also considered at the level of the regulator that it was not just enough to introduce a waiver and do debt forgiveness. We also reconsidered the licensing regime going forward. And the minister also announced that we're granting a 30% discount on existing license fees. So hopefully that will not only provide succor to those who are existing, but I think it's also a way of lowering the entry barriers so that we can have more young people and more entrepreneurial-minded people get into the broadcast sector.
Professor Armstrong Idachaba, Director General, National Broadcasting Commission. Thank you for your insight and thanks for joining us on the program today. It was our pleasure.
And thank you for putting Nigerian broadcasting on Business Express. It underscores the point that broadcasting can provide money.
There's always room for improvement. You have been watching Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. The program returns shortly.
Let me assure Nigerians that all COVID-19 intervention funds are safe in the Treasury single account, and that government is still open to donations in this regard. Government has opened special accounts with 5 commercial banks which are directly linked to the Treasury single account. Donated funds are safe in the Central Bank of Nigeria. For verifiable information about the funds and other financial obligations of the federal government, please contact us directly at the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning. The account details for the donations are as follows.
As the coronavirus pandemic continues to affect businesses, with most of them operating in less than full capacity, Elizabeth Andrew reports on how some businesses in Jos are surviving.
In the past months, business landscape has radically changed due to the coronavirus. This has affected sales and services in the country, that led to closure of business or laying off staff.
It has actually hit the industry very badly because me as a person, I have an event center, and immediately this thing happened, I knew many people calling me that they wanted to cancel.
However, some businesses are uniquely suited to COVID-19 crisis and have seen an uptick in demand. Businesses like the telecommunication industry, where people now meet virtually through chat, TikTok, Zoom, even e-learning in most schools have blossomed the industry. Others are the catering services with improvised means to meet the demands of their customers, even through deliveries and pickups. This is Mr. Jide, who owns an eatery in Jos, and he tells us how the eatery has been thriving all this while.
We got a lot of calls. Some wanted, like in large quantity, as in like 20 liters of stew, chicken stew, beef stew, and the soups. Most of the soups that we produced for people and froze them were like in the quantity of like 3 liters, 4 liters. It has opened that kind of market. There are some soups that some people cannot have access to the ingredients or the spices to such soups. So they come here, they ask for this particular soup. We have access to
grocery stores, pharmaceuticals, cable services, fuel and gas stations, as well as home gardening and animal farming.
People got bored and they started looking at the backyards to see how they can get domestic jobs. So in rabbit business, we noticed there was an increase in the number of farmers that want to keep rabbits.
The only thing that can guarantee your financial security is what you can do with your hands.
So it becomes very necessary that we should look elsewhere, especially the non-oil sector.
These businesses have creatively learned new ways to adapt to coronavirus pandemic and thrive even as the world's economy faces its worst challenge.
And data from the Central Bank of Nigeria shows that Nigeria's gross official reserves declined by $400 million in June to 36.2 billion naira. This follows the additional 3.4 billion naira by the IMF within its rapid financing instrument and other loans by the federal government. Total reserves by the end of June covered 7.1 months of merchandise imports on the basis of balance of payment for the 12 months to March. The CBN says the Nigerian position would have been worse had it not been for the fall in the import demand and for CBN's temporary holds to forex sales to Bureau de Change. Stocks looking good this Wednesday after losing steam early in the week. At the end of Wednesday's session, the all-share index firmed up to 0.75% to close the day at 24,278.07 basis points. Market capitalization ended at 12.664 trillion naira. Fidelity Bank, MTN Nigeria and WAPCO were the most sought-after stocks. WAPCO was up 10% just as Berger Paints lost 9.63%. Global markets maintain bearish run as new coronavirus cases fear continue to affect markets. Bosede Abel has a summary of market activities.
The Reds dominated most global stocks in previous sessions, with the United States taking the lead. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 397 points, breaking a two-day winning streak. The Dow was brought down by a 4.8% drop in Boeing. The S&P 500 also registered a loss, slipping 1.1% to break a 5-day win streak. However, in early trading of 8th July, U.S. stock futures were little changed, following weakness in equities in the previous session. Dow futures suggested an opening gain of about 20 points. S&P 500 futures and Nasdaq 100 futures were both also nearly unchanged. Asia stocks opened mixed as concerns surrounding the coronavirus pandemic continue to linger. Shanghai Composite closed 1.74% higher at 3,403.44. Hang Seng Index also added 0.59% as of its final hour of trading, while Nikkei dipped 0.78% to close at 22,438.65. European markets were lower as surging coronavirus cases in parts of the world continue to cast doubt over the prospect of a global economic recovery. For Africa's stocks, Namibia's overall index, South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40, and Tunisia's Tunidex posted gains, while on the negative were Ghana's GSA Composite and Nairobi's All Share.
This is where we end this edition of Business Express. We value your feedback, so keep the comments, observations, and suggestions coming. Be informed, all previous episodes are available on YouTube on NTA's channel. You can also communicate with us on Twitter, and the handle is NTA News Now. Don't forget to use the hashtag BizExp. Remember to always wash your hands with soap and water under running water, or use a sanitizer as the world battles COVID-19. Business Express returns Thursday, 9:30 on the network service of the NTA. I am Amina Nujain.